Now, if you're new to 3D and CG stuff, the word render or rendering might not mean anything to you, but when you come to start getting into 3D, it becomes a word you know and maybe you wish you didn't know if it takes too long. But I just want to show you the basics of how to do it in Cinema 4D and the basic tools you're going to want to use to be able to render. And so let me just explain what rendering does. So what it does is that we have this imagery in Cinema 4D. And let's say you want to get this out into Photoshop. You want to put it on the internet. You want to render an animation to cut into your movie or do whatever you want. In order to do that, you're going to have to render it. So rendering is the processing that the software does to output it to whatever you want to output it to, whether it's still images or movies or image sequences. So what we're looking at here is a viewport preview. So this is just a preview. This is not our actual rendered output. So the way we see what our actual rendered output is going to look like, we would click this button up here, which is render view, which is also Control R. So we press Control R. That's what it's going to look like when we send it out, when we render it. And you have a couple other buttons here that are all related to rendering. You can go up here to the render menu and find some other stuff, but this might be too confusing right now, so let's just focus on these three. So you're going to use this one to preview your renders, see what they look like. You're going to use this one, render to picture viewer. So this is the one that you actually use to output your files. So this is sending out rendered images here. Here's what they would be named. So how do we control what they're named and where they go and what size they are and all the stuff that you're going to want to do? You're going to want to click here on the render settings. So let's go ahead and make a new one, because I have some of these preset ones in here that might not be the same as what you have. So let me start with a fresh one. So the stuff you're going to want to know is that here you have the preset. So this is the resolution. This is a resolution preset. And you can click in here and they'll try to give you some common resolutions. So let's say film and video is one I use a lot. So I would want like 1080p. So 24 frames per second, 1080p. So this is 1080p. If you wanted to go to like the screen or the web, you can just use any of these presets and they'll try to help you along. So let's stay with this 1080p one. So it's going to render 1920 by 1080. That's the size of our image. Resolution, this DPI, doesn't really matter here in 3D right now. This is the frame rate. This only matters if you're doing animation. Film stuff is usually 24. Games and TV is like 30, but 24 is a good one. And then the frame range. So we have our frame range down here if we're doing animation. This is where we tell it what to render, what frame or what frames. So by default, it does current frame. It's set to send out 1, that's what we're going to do here in this example. But if you wanted to do everything, you would go all frames, 0 to 72. Or if you only wanted to do 24, you could type that in there. So this is important here. We only want 1 frame, so let's just say current frame, frame 0. And then the next menu we're going to go into that's important is save. So we check it, we tell it we want to save an image, and then we tell it where to save it. So I'm going to go to the desktop and I'm going to call it test. So now this is going to render out the image test to the desktop. And then the format is also important. I'm going to say I want a PNG. You can change the bit depth if you want here, and if the format has any options, you can do that here. Don't need any sound. These two are just the important things, the basic things you need to know to send stuff out. So now when I use now when I use render to picture viewer or use the shortcut Shift R, you see it looks like the same thing happened, right? We have our test.png. But if I actually go out to my desktop, now we can find that test.png image that we rendered. So that's the basics of rendering stuff out, still images. And you have some other functions here, anti-aliasing, that controls how smooth your edges and things are. So let me just show you the difference. So if we go to none, no anti-aliasing, you see these little tiny jagged lines. And then if we go to geometry, which is like the medium setting, you see that they're smooth now. And then best is the highest setting, it's ultimate smoothness. But most of the time you can get away with geometry. Then this other stuff you don't really need to worry about in this basic setting. It's really just knowing how to set the resolution. And if you want to do animations, the frame rate and how many frames and where it's saving it to in the format. So for these basics, that's all you need to know about how to render stuff out. But I'll show you one more thing that it's kind of a cool tool, but I don't really use it in practice. It's the render region tool. So if you click here and hold this down, and then we have this render region tool, which turns into this little crosshairs. So we draw a box in the viewport, and then whenever we move or update the screen, so there's a couple other little things in the render menu here I'll show you that might be handy. Say you didn't want to render the whole image because it takes too long. You can just go in here and click render region and then draw a box, and it'll just render whatever's in that box. Now let's say you wanted to continuously render what is in that box, then you would go down here to interactive render region. Then you could adjust this box or draw this box, and then when you move or update, it will continuously render it. I don't ever use this one. I can see sometimes it would be helpful, but I just use the old way of doing it. Oops, I didn't mean to delete that. I wanted to go in here and then select it again to turn it off. So that's all you really need to know for the basics for rendering. In this part of the tutorial series, we'll do more advanced stuff later, but now you know how to render stuff. If you did create a material, now that you know how to make materials, oops, we wanted to make that red, okay. So it will render it with your material. And if you were to go and add a floor and add a light, turn on some shadows, then it'll render it with that stuff too. So it does a pretty good job in the viewport of giving you some nice quality, but you really don't see the final quality until you click render. And then even, you'll be surprised, some stuff really only shows up when you render to the picture viewer. So some things might not look right even when you render here in the viewport, and you have to render to the picture viewer to check them. And it has this cool thing where it saves all the images that you rendered so you can flip through them, and even has a thing to compare them and stuff in there. But I'll show you that later when we go over more advanced stuff. I just wanted to show you the basics of how to render an image in the viewport and how to render it out to disk.